It is time for the 16-week update of this cactus seed soil battle. So for those of you who are new to this series, I sowed a bunch of Astrophytum and Ariocarpus seeds 16 weeks ago, and I'm testing 6 different soils. So the soils are Uni-Gro cactus mix, Rob Romero's mix, using my native very bad clay soil, Miracle-Gro Seed Starter with Miracle-Gro Perlite, Miracle-Gro Cactus Citrus Palm Mix, just these straight out of the bag. These two are the 2 premium soils that I purchased off of Etsy, which are considerably more expensive than the mixes you can just buy either at the big box stores or at your nursery, which would be the Uni-Gro. The first of the premium soils is from East Coast Kamanchaka. And then the next one is Mike's Rare Plants, his Lofo Pro Seed Starter. And so I sowed 25 Astrophytum seeds. They are Astrophytum hybrid seeds from my own plant. 25 seeds per pot. And you'll notice that there's this empty bit here because this is where I had also sowed Ariocarpus seeds, Ariocarpus retusa seeds from my own plant. And you'll notice that I moved it because, we're at 16 weeks. These guys are big enough to start getting acclimated to regular air. So this is the first time we did an update without having to deal with the dome. I moved these Ariocarpus pots out to an adjacent tray here where they're, sorry about how dusty the tray is, but where they're going to remain covered for a while because from previous experiences growing Ariocarpus from seed, they seem to need more moisture and more protection from light for longer than Astrophytum. So I did separate those 6 pots out. This makes it so that the experiment maybe is not, so controlled, but that's the problem with mixing genuses when you sow, a whole bunch of genuses together in the same tray and they have different care needs and different growth habits. It's better to separate them out for reasons like this. So for this update, I'm not going to be able to show a bunch of data and count it. Things have been so busy that doing the charts takes a lot of time, and I'm just out of time for this update. So we're going to go through each of these pots and just take a look at the condition of the seedlings, and then I'll give you a really rough idea of kind of what I'm seeing, but no charts this time. Let's go ahead and get started. So let's start with tray number 1. And then we'll take a look at tray number 2, which were the additional experiments that I started. Gosh, I'm already forgetting how many weeks ago. It's probably been like 7 weeks or something. I completely lost track of time. I'll just put text up on the screen on the time, on how old those guys are. All right, so let's take a look at this now. Just as a reminder, these columns here at the 2 ends on the left and the right, those are dummy pots. They are not part of this experiment. The ones in the center, the 6 columns in the center, they are part of the experiment. So you can see the dummy pots. There's still some seedlings in there. Still doing all right. Look at that pot of Ariocarpus seeds, of dummy ones. And then on this side, there's a couple of empty pots. And then a volunteer here. I don't know what that is. Almost looks like food. And then some of you know what these are, or some of you may know what they are. But you see all this orange stuff? That might be some sort of fungus. Not so great on these dummy pots on this right side, but that's okay. Let's take a look at our experiment pots. Okay, we'll go from the left and go to the right, just like we've been doing in our previous update videos. So this is the Uni-Gro cactus soil straight out of the bag, no amendments, and you can see the Astrophytum look pretty good. There have been some losses since the last update, the 12-week update, but I think mostly it came from this pot. Seedlings look, I guess this one looks probably the best. You can see, I don't know if you can see on the camera, but there's some fuzzy stuff in their mold, which we talked about last time, and you can see it's still there. I did spray these pots down with Physan 20, which probably is not so effective on existing mold. I did not use peroxide because I just don't have a bottle, like a sprayer bottle available, so I just did whatever I could. With everything going on, I've just had so little time to pay attention to these seedlings, so they've been just sort of left on their own. So here's the Rob Romero mix. If you remember again, the native soil I used is my very bad clay soil. So the seedlings came up pretty well. I mean, look at how full this pot is. But if you look at the Uni-Gro versus the Rob Romero mix, you can see the difference in seedling size. Let's look here too. See, this is the Rob Romero pot. There are seedlings and they're very camouflaged with the pumice top dressing, but you can see there's an obvious difference in size. Same thing here. See them in there, but I think this is just a reflection on my native soil. Not good for growing cactus from seed. And then this thing also sparked a debate on, hey, if I don't use my native soil, if I use like a cactus soil instead, you know, how would it do? And that's what that second tray takes a look at. All right, so next is the Uni-Gro Seed Starter and Uni-Gro Perlite. Well, it's doing okay, but if you look at it compared to the Uni-Gro, you can tell the difference. This pot, like, they're so small. So small. And this one. Those two look okay, but, you know, it's pretty obvious there's a difference, you know, to some degree. Then we've got the Uni-Gro Cactus Citrus Palm Mix straight out of the bag, really not doing well at all. Like, I was looking at these, there's been quite a severe loss, I would say, between the last update and now. Like, you can't... There might be 2 seedlings in there, and one of them is so small that you can't even see. So this, I'm not expecting these pots to last. This one's actually doing better. Next, we have the first of our premium soils, which is from East Coast Camanchaca. I don't think I saw any, oh, there is one loss in one of the pots I'll show you, but looking really good. It would be that one right in the center of the screen. That one's looking very shriveled. Everything else seems to still be alive. There's an interesting trend I'll show you in just a moment. Here's the last pot, East Coast Camanchaca. I think everybody's still alive there. Now we come to Mike's Rare Plants' Lofo Pro Seed Starter. There might have been a little bit of a loss. I think more on this pot. There's some seedlings in there that are pretty small. But I'm going to show you something interesting. Look at this one. Mike's Rare Plants, looking so good. And the interesting thing now is if we look at, on the right hand side is Mike's Rare Plants, and on the left hand side is the East Coast Camanchaca. I think the Mike's Rare Plant seedling size is larger than the East Coast Camanchaca soil. Look at that. Now this had been lagging for quite some time, and then all of a sudden, look here too. Look at that. It's really interesting. It's pretty obvious to my eyes that those seeds or seedlings in Mike's Rare Plant soil some of them are bigger than the ones in the East Coast Camanchaca. And the interesting thing is, let me remind you about the kit that I received from Mike's Rare Plants. Let me show you. So if you remember from the first episode of this series, Mike's Rare Plant seed starter kit came with more than just the soil to start the seeds. It came with some amendments that you would add after you acclimate the seedlings to regular air. So there's worm castings and there's this bacterial complex. And he has really clear instructions on when to use this. And let me just point my camera to this and you can press pause to read the text. But he's essentially saying that the extras are saved for after you fully acclimate and pull lids completely. The pure worm castings and the bacteria complex are top dressed on the soil surface and watered in after the soil dries down completely, after the lids have been removed. And then he goes on to talk about how much worm castings he uses and how much bacterial complex he uses. But this is really interesting, so I'm going to follow his instructions with the 2 amendments and see what happens, because there's a chance that this might end up boosting the growth rate in his soil. Let's see what happens. I'm very curious to see that. And we're just at about that time to add this. So I just open the dome like completely like this for this extended amount of time the first time. I'm still keeping the dome over with all the vents open and kind of letting the lip like sit loosely on the tray. So these are already drying out for their first time. Okay, so now is the thing I want to show you that's interesting. I noticed that the pots on the edge of the tray have seedlings that seem to tend to be larger than the ones in the middle of the tray. I mean, look at this. If I really zoom out, like if you look at East Coast Kamanchaka, it's pretty obvious. Look at that pot of seedlings versus this one. This one is smaller than that one. Same thing on Mike's Rare Plants. It's really, really obvious. Look at how small these seedlings are compared to the one over there. And if I look at this, you see how different the pots on the edge? So the question is why? The pots on the edge get moisture from the dome, from like sitting right next to the dome where there's condensation. There's probably a very minor temperature gradient. I don't know about light intensity either, but it's an interesting, almost consistent phenomena that I'm seeing across the pots. The only one where it's not as obvious is on the Uni-Gro. Like the one over there doesn't look too different from the ones on the end. In fact, this one's not doing well out of the 3 Uni-Gro pots. So very, very interesting. So this is what tray number 1 looks like at 16 weeks. Let me show you the Ariocarpus. Alright, so the Ariocarpus I have separated out, as I mentioned earlier. I was getting a lot of fungus, like that moldy fungus, in one of these pots. I think it was the Uni-Gro. It's the most moldy. And I did spray Physant 20, but it's not doing anything. It just comes back. And you can see maybe at that corner right in the center of the screen, a seedling that has succumbed to the fungus. So this is Uni-Gro. It's not bad. Some losses, but there's still seedlings left. Then we go to Rob Romero's mix. It's going to be really hard to see because they're so camouflaged in there, but they're still in there. I did not do a count on these. Here's the Miracle-Gro Seed Starter with Miracle-Gro Perlite. You can kind of find them by looking for the little spines on the areoles, or the tubercles that are growing out. Very, very difficult to see. I'm sorry I don't have numbers for this update. Hopefully I can do some numbers next time. Here's Miracle-Gro Cactus Citrus Palm Mix. I can see 2 seedlings left in there, so that hasn't changed from the last update. Here's the East Coast Kamanchaka, which had been doing very well. You can see they're probably a bit light stressed, perhaps, because they're very dark. A little bit wrinkly, but I think for the most part they're all still there. Sorry if I'm not pointing my camera right. And then we've got the Lofa Pro Seed Starter from Mike's Rare Plants, which you can see seedlings in there. Can you see there's bugs in here? Let me try to zoom in. See the bugs? Those guys have been showing up in my other trays of seedlings that are not part of this experiment, and I cannot get rid of them. Like, they're just, I don't know if they just come from the soil and then do their thing, but I don't have the time right now to deal with them, so I just leave them. I don't know if they're hurting the seedlings or not. Maybe they are, but we'll just note that there are bugs inside these pots. Okay, next let's look at tray number 2. I'm going to go through the dome because I don't want those bugs getting in here just yet, and they are going to get in here, but I'm just trying to hold it off a little bit longer. So we're going to do our other way of just looking through the domes again. How do I do this? So we've got, let's just start on the left. The Miracle-Gro Cactus Citrus Palm Mix with the Japanese bonsai soil, which is Akadama, Lava Rock, Pumice. Let's see, how do we do this? There's the Astrophytum. Looking good. More Astrophytum. Ariocarpus. It's very, very hard to see. And without numbers, I don't know how useful this is, but at least, you know, at least we can kind of eyeball how they look. Astrophytum. Next pot is Rob Romero's mix, but with Miracle-Gro Cactus Citrus Palm as the native soil. You can see the Astrophytum. I can't really see a difference between these two pots. The seedlings look like they're progressing about the same. And then the next pot, looking good. Same thing, by eyeballing it, it looks about the same as the other pot. Ariocarpus, looking pretty good. And then the last pot of Astrophytum, looking okay. Next is Uni-Gro with the Japanese bonsai mix. I can't see anything on my viewfinder. I think I'm pointing at the right pot. Astrophytum, also not too different from the other two pots. I'd say they're about the same in terms of seedling development. We've got more Astrophytum. Then Ariocarpus. Oh, never mind, the bugs are already in there. Yeah, there's no avoiding it. I don't know where they're coming from. Maybe they come from the soil itself. And then Astrophytum. I cannot see anything. Next is Rob Romero's mix, but with Uni-Gro as the native soil component. See, Astrophytum. More Astrophytum. Ariocarpus. Then more Astrophytum. And if I eyeball it again, I don't see a huge difference between this mix and then the other three. Next we've got something a little bit different, which is worm castings mixed with the Japanese bonsai soil. This one has a bigger difference between the seedling progress and the other mixes. It's not doing as well. The seedlings are a lot smaller. So there's Astrophytum, more Astrophytum, then the Ariocarpus, which I don't even know if you can see. There's some in there. And then the last pot of Astrophytum. Let me see if I can do a side-by-side of the worm castings with the, let's say, Rob Romero's mix with Uni-Gro. I don't know if you can see, that's Ariocarpus, let's do this. I don't know if you can see the difference in the size of the seedlings, maybe it's not that obvious. Actually those pots on the edge are not that bad. Hard to say. Alright, last but not least is my adult soil mix, which is, I think, 75% pumice, 25% Uni-Gro. It's the Astrophytum. More Astrophytum. Trying to see if there's kind of a visual difference in this mix from everybody else. Maybe a little less development, but not bad. Ariocarpus. Ariocarpus look fairly good. Oh, there's a lot of bugs in there. And then the last pot of Astrophytum. I don't know if you can see anything. And then I've got my dummy columns. I think a lot of them are Ariocarpus. I think they're all Ariocarpus. Yeah, on that last row. And then I've got, let me show you the other dummy column. These are Astrophytum, my own seeds. These seeds look different from the seeds from these other hybrids. These seeds actually are like gigantic, more red colored seeds, and they look like they're all Asterias based. I bet their mother plant was perhaps one of my Asterias plants, or Asterias hybrids, but these are all hybrids. Isn't that interesting though? Look at how different they look from the neighboring pot, which are more like myriostigma type. I think I have, those are Ariocarpus. I've got more Ariocarpus. And then I think these are more of those Asterias hybrids. Isn't that interesting? Very, very fun. And then just to note again that the Ariocarpus seeds used in this experiment are not from the same mother plant as the Ariocarpus from tray number 1, so it's not really a fair, like a truly fair comparison between the two trays on the Ariocarpus. The only fair thing we can do is to compare between soils in this tray, which I'm really apologize, I just cannot do the counting this weekend. I just have too much going on because it takes so much time and to compile the data. So maybe at the 20-week update we can do some numbers. Hopefully that's okay with everybody. At least we can see what the seedlings look like. Alright y'all, I think later on this is going to be another pain as we have to separate out the Ariocarpus from the Astrophytum as we get close to taking the dome off, you know, when they become 16 weeks old, which is probably another 10 weeks or so. Tomorrow I will be off to the Desert Botanical Garden for a very special recording that I've never done before. I mean, it's of an event that we're very used to, but in a way that I've never done before. Alright y'all, thank you very much for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed this. Take care, bye-bye.